Thank you. Dan McCurdy. I'm a Delta airline worker on the ramp here in Minneapolis. And I don't know, actually quite a few of you look pretty familiar. We've had an ongoing union organizing drive going that dated back pre-pandemic, and then the pandemic kind of shut everything down. So we had worked through a few issues back then. We felt that Delta was interfering, and you guys were able to help us push back. Delta's anti-union campaign was spilling out into some of MAC's hallways that weren't actually leased by Delta, and you were helpful in pushing back and having that information removed and put into just Delta leased spaces. I come back to you again today because Delta is again interfering in our right to a federally protected right to organize. The Railway Labor Act, which governs union elections, it states that employees may select a representative without interference, influence, or coercion of any kind. Delta has specifically dedicated anti-union managers all around the country and including right here in Minneapolis. One of their tasks is to attend new hire classes, letting them know that Delta is very much against unions. In this union drive, we've had managers come up and stand behind union advocates, and they'd stand behind them as these employees are trying to get a union authorization card signed. And these union authorization cards are what it takes for us to get to an election. So it's obviously, there's some intimidation that's taking place. Our break rooms have the anti-union propaganda propped up on stands, dissuading employees from joining a union. These flyers have no regard for truth or facts. In one flyer in particular, it does a compensation comparison, and it asks the reader to assume that Delta employee and our unionized competition started full-time in 2013. It asks for them to assume that each works a 40-hour work week and then continues on with a comparison. No big issue, right? According to our Blow Wing director, over 50% of our ramp has less than 2 years seniority. They're new. So they don't know that this comparison does not represent one single Delta airline employee across the system. Not one single employee could have possibly have gone through the scenario. And why is that? And for starters, Delta involuntarily reduced our hours by 25% during the pandemic. And this didn't happen at the unionized carriers because they had union contracts that guaranteed that 40-hour work week. And also back in 2013, Delta hired employees as ready reserves. And these employees didn't have anything except for a base wage. They didn't have health benefits like our union counterparts. They didn't have vacation. They didn't have anything. It was base wage. And that's what they're comparing us to in these flyers that they're handing out. The ready reserves were also back in 2013. They were capped at working 1,400 hours per year. That's a far cry from full-time employment. Ready reserves didn't even progress through the pay scale, the same as unionized employees. Delta's ready reserves made entry-level wages year after year until they could finally get full-time. And that was 4 or 5 years back then. It took a long time to get into a full-time position. So that's the reality as opposed to Delta's comparisons that they're putting out for these new hires to see. They don't understand the history and what's happened and gone on. So if you're a new employee like the vast majority of my coworkers, you simply accept this information as facts. But they're purposely misleading and they're disingenuous. And they're using these tactics to maintain a financial advantage over our unionized competition. And previously I stated that the Railway Labor Act offers the protection of organizing without interference, influence, or coercion of any kind. Does this sound like an environment that's free of all of those issues? And it's not by any stretch of the imagination. In this campaign and in our pre-pandemic campaign, we filed for interference reports for the NMB to address. However, the NMB ruled that they could not address the interference issues until we filed for an election. So can you see and understand the problem here? Basically, Delta gets they get to operate without any oversight. And I'm coming here to ask you guys as a governing body to even the playing field. And we're not asking for an advantage, and we're not asking you to hand us the election. What we need from the Metropolitan Airport Commission is to bring some sort of fairness back into this process. Delta doesn't care about the truth. They don't care about the facts. Their sole objective is to defeat unionization. And if you do nothing, it'll give Delta the nod and a permission slip to continue their union busting as usual. So I appreciate the time that you guys have given me here today to speak. And as you can understand, working at an airport in secured areas creates a unique difficulty of interacting with our peers and getting out the truth. We'd be more than willing to work with MAC for a reasonable solution and get some sort of fairness back into this process. We need and deserve some sort of